Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Nitai Gora Haribo Haribo Nitai Gora Haribo Rantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Gaura Patmanand Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
This morning, we're studying a section of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 9. I know you've got a new way of doing things. So you're going to have to help me understand exactly how you want to read these verses and which ones we're going to chant and study. I think it starts at 9:29, chapter 9, 29.
So what?
Then we go to 30, and then we make a little jump to 40 to 49. That's what I understand.
Okay. Yeah, we usually just alternate.
Okay.
Like,
All right. You take it away.
and then we'll, whatever verse you want to highlight, we'll do the same.
I might interject with a couple of comments here and there. That's all right.
While Bhishmadev was describing occupational duties, the sun's course ran into the northern hemisphere. This period desired by mystics who die at their will.
Thereupon that man who spoke on different subjects with thousands of meanings and who fought on thousands of battlefields and protected thousands of men stopped speaking and, being completely freed from all bondage, withdrew his mind from everything else and fixed his wide open eyes upon the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who stood before him four-handed, dressed in yellow garments that glittered and shined.
Okay, so before we move on, just I understand that you've been studying Bhishma's instructions up to this point. And this is one of his final instructions. The same way as we talk about Srila Prabhupada's final instructions in terms of his passing. And these great souls and pure devotees, they not only teach us with the example of their life, with the words that they can tell us to explain messages of Shastra, but particularly in one of the most important factors, and that is how to leave this body successfully in meditation on Krishna. Now, it's a common thing that, in religious discourse, we talk a lot about death. And when I do work with the BBC doing different kind of topics, we try to be very careful not to make that a recurrent theme, because it tends to, get a little samey for the audience and may sound a little morbid or difficult, because it can bring up a lot of stuff for people. But in this case, I think we're being called on to have a little look at this particular subject. So these two verses, I think Kalakanta has chosen to start with because it's Bhishma preparing. And what's really happening in these verses, we're hearing about all the amazing things he achieved in his life, and in his winning battles, and who spoke on different subjects. He is an authority on social dharma, varnashram, and all the principles of what it takes to follow one's duties and dharmas, particularly in the Kshatriya order. So he has done so much in his life, but now he's shutting off. He's turning inwards. He's turning away from his concerns and worries and engagement with the external world. Because at this point, his body is wrecked. He has given the knowledge to Yudhishthira. Beautifully recorded here, and again, it will be elaborated more in the 11th canto. He has done his duty. He's done everything that is required of him in this life. And it is very clear at this point, it's time to move on. Now, it's a fact that every embodied being has to go through that particular moment when they understand, am I fighting for my life? Or am I now understanding it's time to let go? I don't know if any of you have been in the presence of anyone departing. My religious education teacher at school said, if you want to understand life, you have to see two things. You have to see life coming into this world and life departing this world. Because what you see in between, we may call life, but it's life just full of distraction and chaos and worries and problems and, trying to do this and all our desires, we call that life. But it's not an understanding of life, at least what it's all about. And So seeing it come in and seeing it leave is something important to us, and that's a meditation. So we're now going to witness the passing of Bhishma, and that will be our meditation and help us understand what life is. So let us move on now to the next few verses. I think we start at 40. Oh yeah, here we are. It's actually not. Okay. Would like to go with that?
Let my mind be fixed upon Sri Krishna, whose motions and smiles of love attracted the damsels of Rajagan, the gopis. The damsels imitated the characteristic movements of the Lord after he disappeared from the rasa dance.
At the Rajasuya Ganjana Yajna sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhishthira, there was the greatest assembly of all the men of the world, in the royal and learned orders. And in that great assembly, Lord Sri Krishna was worshipped by one and all as the most exalted personality of Godhead. This happened during my presence, and I remember the incident in order to keep my mind upon the Lord.
Now I can meditate with full concentration upon that one Lord, Sri Krishna, now present before me, because now I have transcended the misconceptions of duality in regards to his presence in everyone's heart, even in the hearts of mental speculators. He is in everyone's heart. The sun may be perceived differently, but the sun is one.
Okay, now we're going to chant the next verse, 43.
I'm going to go through all of them.
Oh, that's how you prefer to do it? Yep. Yep. Happy.
Sutta Goswami said, thus Bhishma Dev merged himself in the Super Soul, Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight, and actions, and thus he became silent and his breathing stopped.
Knowing that Bhishma Dev had merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute, all present there became silent like birds at the end of the day.
Thereafter, both men and demigods sounded drums in honor, and the honest royal order commenced demonstrations of honor and respect, and from the sky fell showers of flowers.
O descendant of Brigu, Jonathan, after performing funeral rituals for the dead body of Bhishma Dev, Maharaj Yudhishthira was momentarily overtaken with grief.
All the great sages then glorified Lord Sri Krishna, who was present there, by confidential Vedic hymns. Then all of them returned to their respective hermitages, bearing always Lord Krishna within their hearts.
Thereafter, Maharaj Yudhishthira at once went to his capital, Hastinapur, accompanied by Lord Sri Krishna, and there he consoled his uncle and aunt Gandhari, who was an ascetic.
After this, the great religious king, Maharaj Yudhishthira, executed the royal power in the kingdom strictly according to the codes of royal principles approved by his uncle and confirmed by Lord Sri Krishna.
Next. Sutta Uvacha.
Sutta Uvacha.
Krishna.
Krishna.
Evam.
Evam.
Bhagavati.
Bhagavati.
Krishna Eva Bhagavati.
Krishna Eva Bhagavati.
Mano. Vak.
Vak.
Drishti.
Drishti.
Vritibhi.
Vritibhi.
Manovaktrishti Vritibi
Manovaktrishti Vritibi
Atmani
Atmani
Atmanam Avesha Sa Anantasvasha Uparamat Sontasvasha Uparamat Sutta Uvacha Krishna evam Bhagavati Manovaktrishti Vrittibihi Atmanyatmanam Avesha Sontarshvasa Uparamat Sutta Uvacha Krishna evam Bhagavati Manovaktrishti Vrittibi Atmanyatmanam Avesha Sotatvasya Uparamat Sutta Uvacha Krishna evam Bhagavati Manovaktrishti Vrittibi Atmanyatmanam Avesha Sontasvasya Uparamat Sutta Uvacha Krishna evam Bhagavati Manovaktrishti Vrittibi Atmanyatmanam Avesha Sutta Uvacha Sutta Goswami said, Krishna, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Evam, only. Bhagavati, unto him. Manaha, with mind. Vak, speech. Drishti, sight. Ritibihi, activities. Atmani, unto the super soul. Atmanam, the living entity or living being. Sorry. Avesha, having merged it. Sa, e. Anta shvasa, inhaling. Uparamat, became silent. Translation. Sutta Goswami said, thus Bhishma Dev merged himself in the super soul, Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight, and actions. And thus he became silent, and his breathing stopped. Please repeat. Sutta Goswami said, thus Bhishma merged himself in the super soul, Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight, and actions. And thus he became silent, and his breathing stopped. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. The stage attained by Bhishma Dev while quitting his material body is called Nirvikalpa Samadhi, because he merged his self into thinking of the Lord and his mind into remembering his different activities. He chanted the glories of the Lord, and by his sight he began to see the Lord personally present before him. And thus all his activities became concentrated upon the Lord without deviation. This is the highest stage of perfection, and it is possible for everyone to attain this stage by practice of devotional service. The devotional service of the Lord consists of 9 principles of service activities, and they are 1. Hearing, 2. Chanting, 3. Remembering, 4. Serving the lotus feet, 5. Worshipping, 6. Praying, 7. Executing the orders, 8. Fraternizing, and 9. Fully surrendering. Any one of them or all of them are equally competent to award the desired result, but they require to be practiced persistently under the guidance of an expert devotee of the Lord. The first item, hearing, is the most important item of all, and therefore hearing of the Bhagavad Gita, and later on Srimad Bhagavatam, is essential for the serious candidate who wants to attain the stage of Bhishma Dev at the end. The unique situation at Bhishma Dev's time of death can be attained even though Lord Krishna may not be personally present. His words of the Bhagavad Gita or those of Srimad Bhagavatam are identical with the Lord. They are sound incarnations of the Lord, and one can fully utilize them to be entitled to attain the stage of Sri Bhishma Dev, who was one of the 8 Vasus. Every man or animal must die at a certain stage of life, but one who dies like Bhishma Dev attains perfection, and one who dies forced by the laws of nature dies like an animal. This is the difference between a man and an animal. The human form of life is especially meant for dying like Bhishma Dev. Sudha Uvacha. Krishna evam bhagavati mano drishti vritti bi atmanya manam aveshya nontas rasha uparamat. Sudha Goswami said, thus Bhishma Dev merged himself in the Supersoul, Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight, and actions. And thus he became silent, and his breathing stopped. Oh my God. What's actually very interesting about this particular passage and framing these instructions, which are going to repeat, this is going to be a theme that's going to pop up several times in the Bhagavatam, because it takes repetition before we get something. But in this section, particularly because it's the first canto, why Vyasadeva has placed it here is because it's a very interesting analysis. We've just heard the difference between the passing of an animal and the passing of a human. Humans can think about this stage. They can understand that it's coming. They can understand philosophically. They can prepare for it. And they have the ability to direct their next birth. Even animals can do that. If they meditate on a particular creature that's about to or is eating them, sometimes it's said that entity will then take that particular birth. So even in the animal species, this principle that whatever antikalecha mame va, the end of death you think of Krishna, but yam yam vapi smaran bhava, whatever you're thinking about, it can affect your destination. But the whole of Vedic culture is kind of geared like this, thinking about, how can I prepare for a next life? So before we even start on worrying about where we're going in our next life, we have to be assured that there is one. Now, some religions say, go with us and you'll attain eternal life. In our understanding, you already got it. You already got eternal life. The issue isn't to get eternal life, it's what you're going to do with it. You can be eternally here in the material world. You can be eternally doing the rounds through all the species and demigods, in samsara. So the question is, what do you really want to do and where do you really belong? This is something that we're trying to incorporate within the Science Museum of the Vedic Planetarium. For those who are not aware, the new temple in Mayapur, of course, the central dome is the temple, and that's where Radha Madhav and Panchatattva Parampara will be situated. And the east wing has Lord Nrsingadev, and the west wing was reserved for what Prabhupada wanted as a museum, a science museum, showing scientifically the understanding of consciousness and the Atma and our reincarnation through the species. And then showing that it's not just life on this earth, but we have access to life on other planets. And that we can go around a cycle, not just of one life or many lifetimes, but even within this whole universe, described as 311 trillion years. And then be wound up, go back into the body of Mahavishnu, and then come out again and do it all again. So you can spend your eternal existence in that cycle. And what we are hoping to be able to do in the description of all of this is inspire some folk to think, is that what I want? That sounds a little tedious at best. Maybe if I am this conscious being, maybe I belong in a place that is the home of consciousness, a place that is equivalent to my conscious nature, a place where consciousness thrives rather than being conditioned. So the first thing we have to appreciate is this idea that consciousness does not die at the time of death. Here's something I'd like to try. This is a little meditation we sometimes do. Okay? So pop everything down for a second. I'm going to just ask you to relax, close your eyes, and do a little kind of, it's a mind wandering exercise. I'm going to let your mind go free. Don't try and direct it. Don't try and pull it back as you would like to do japa. But just, I'm going to give you a single word prompt. Just wait, see what comes in the mind, and see the different thoughts that flow one after the other within that. Okay, so we're watching our thoughts. The prompt is somewhere. Force your mind, just let it flow. Just watch it. What's it coming up with? Okay, that's probably enough during a Bhagavatam class for daydream. Now, hold it for a moment. Can you remember the order of the thoughts as they came to you? What was the first thought that came in your? I don't need to know. Better it's private. But just see if you can remember what the first thought was, and then whether you what was the one that followed that? Can you track back and remember then what the line of thoughts and where it went? Hands up whose line of thought was pretty wild and really got off track pretty quickly. Yeah? Okay. Tends to happen. Okay, that's good. All right, back with me here. The point is that the material world is changing moment to moment, right? You are seeing this situation here, you're seeing this. Things changing from moment to moment. You're hearing my voice. Words are changing over time. You're hearing this word, then you're hearing the next, and then you're hearing the one after. And even in your mind, you're seeing this thought, and then you're witnessing the next thought and the thought after that. This is how Jiva Goswami describes how we can understand that I, as the observer, am observing that which is not me. This is not me. It's over here. It's changing. I'm observing it. Even I look at my body and I start to wonder, is that me? You know, I'm observing it. So it can't be the me that's observing, because I'm the one who's experiencing what this is like. Therefore, I cannot be it. And even our mind and our thoughts are things that we observe. I cannot be those thoughts. I'm the observer of them. And the interesting thing is that all these other things are changing over time. And this is a very simple verse. You know, material things change. Time drives. Kala is that which drives change. It facilitates things being different. Time isn't the thing that we just measure because we sit here long enough and things, time passes. Time is the thing that makes things change, and our experience of that we call the passing of time. But if we are observing things being changed by time, and we are still the same entity experiencing that, observing it, what does that mean? It means I'm outside of time. We don't change, which means time does not impact me as a conscious being. I see the passing of time, and that way it impacts what I'm trying to do in the world, but it's impacting the world. It's not impacting me as the conscious entity. I am outside of time. And that's what Krishna is trying to get into our heads at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. Even you talk the big changing of time throughout your life, childhood to youth, the old age, and so on. It's just things changing, but you're not. And even at death, you don't change, you move on. So that's the first thing. And the understanding that we have is that if anything's going to survive death, it's got to be me. Anything about me that's going to survive, it's got to be me. It's not got to be something of me, a soul or something, that's different from, something I have. I don't want something I have to survive death. I want me as the owner, me as the actual person to survive death. And that's a difference between our kind of theology on this. That it is me that's going to survive. It's me that's going to be experiencing something different in my next life. That may be a reassurance, or it may be something terrifying to us. But the point is, we want to experience the most important thing. And what's now being shown here is this section is dealing with it's instructions for very advanced humans. The preparation at the time of death. Why do I say it's for advanced? Because it's beyond the standard ritualistic activities of religion. This is getting into yoga in its real sense. This is focusing on those who actually have the ability to prepare and withdraw their consciousness and be able to direct it where they want. This is the yoga process. Now, in materialistic yoga, you can get, and I'm not talking about the leisure center and the local kind of yoga clubs. I'm talking about those yogis who are performing the austerities of yoga in order to obtain the siddhis. And there are different siddhis. One of them particularly is the point of being able to control the point of your death and to be able to direct exactly where you're going to go in your next life. You sit in a particular way, you close the backside, and, raise the Atma up through the chakras to the top of the head, ready to go. There's a process for that. And where will that take you? Well, maybe some one of the very special planets, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Maharloka. These are amazing planets. They're beyond Svarga, beyond the heavenly scene. They are the places, the realms for the enlightened souls. But you don't stay there eternally. And even then, they sometimes get a little rocky. So what's been described here is going beyond even that. This is the verse, the purport where Prabhupada says, this stage attained by Bhishma Dev while quitting his material body is called Nirvikalpa Samadhi. This is, now of course, Bhagavatam came first, and things like Patanjali's Yoga Sutra came much later. And if you look at the Yoga Sutra, it contains so much of the Bhagavatam, practically word for word in places. Now, Patanjali in the first pada of the Yoga Sutra analyzes meditation in different ways. And this word that came up here, vritti, of course, starts the whole yoga ashashananam, which chitta vritti nirodha, the silencing, the quietening of the vrittis. Vritti is a kind of action, function. It can mean kind of flow, flux of the chitta. That is which is disturbing what is in your consciousness. That's really the aim of yoga. And it takes you through the different meditation processes. And one of them, it says, well, first we've got to get rid of vitarka. Vitarka is the type of thinking where it's rational. Tarka is kind of argument. So you're trying to kind of create discussion in your own mind. You are prompting it, right? And in meditation, especially when you chant your japa, we ask you don't do that. Japa time is not a time to think. Now, most of us think it's a great time to think. I can really get on with something, and start my japa. What have I got to plan today? Oh yes, I've got a talk to give later. Let me kind of meditate on it. Hare Krishna. Good points to make, That's your brain full of tarka, full of, you are prompting the thoughts. All the disturbance in your mind is your own fault. You are generating it. So the first thing that a yogi has to do is get rid of that one and get to the stage of nirvitarka. All right? So that's good. So I know that all of you are well on that platform. Then Patanjali says, yeah, but then there's the other one. You see, even in psychology, they say there's logical thinking and there's associative thinking, two types of thinking. Logical is the one you prompt. It's like going on ChatGPT and saying, what do I think about this? And your mind comes back and says, well, I've been able to research this and I think I remember that we've got this, or whatever it is. That's how the mind works. It's your personal ChatGPT, whereas the other type of thinking is associative, and that's the one that you've just been doing. You just watch the mind, and without any help from you, practically with no direction, the mind can give you a steady stream of stuff, can't it? Right? So even when you're not trying to think of something, that stuff comes back into the mind. That's the harder one to get rid of. In fact, Patanjali says, even when you reach the stage where you've removed the seeds that are feeding this stuff, still the mind has managed to come up with something. It's going to torment you to the end of your days. But here, we're talking about nirvikalpa, where we've gone beyond that, all the material thinking, because it's impossible to stop the mind doing its vichar. And it's practically impossible for us not to prompt something. But this is nirvikalpa. because there is no material thinking involved. Why? Because on this one, sorry, I lost my place. Yeah, we've got Mano, Vak, Drishti, Prithivi. All the functions of the mind, the functions of our speech, and the functions of our sight are now focused on Krishna. That was Bhishma's stage. He had overcome all the kind of yoga things that would normally torment a yogi, and practically impossible, as Arjuna Krishna discussed in the Gita. It's practically impossible to control the mind automatically or mechanically. But here we've got a situation where all Bhishma is doing is focusing his mind on his dear friend, the Lord, who's worshipful of him. The person who he took everything, all the arrows on behalf of. And so he's there with Krishna in front of him. His mind is engaged in him. We didn't read many of the beautiful prayers that he offers in connection with Krishna. But this is the object of his meditation. And then his words have been used and engaged in glorification. So even up to the last moment, although I said he'd gone completely inside and not engaged with the world, doesn't mean he'd stopped speaking or stopped thinking. He was using these for Krishna. And his gaze was not on the outside sense objects, but on Krishna in front of him. Absolutely kind of focused. And this type of focus, that's possible. Not just for Bhishma, but actually Prabhupada is encouraging us. It's possible for us. We might think, our minds everywhere. It's crazy. But when does your mind become focused the most? In what circumstances? And I'm talking material life. In material life, when does your mind become focused the most? Doing something's good?
When I have a very strong desire to.
Good. I like this because we get a little progression. Yes, more. Strong. It's really good. Strong affinity. Yeah.
Hard times.
Huh?
Hard times.
Hard times is, yes, that's the other end of it. Yes, that's good. But going in our little progression from doing something to desiring something to having strong affinity to, what's the word we're looking for? Absorption. What's the word? Why? What state are you? Huh? Love. Oh my God, we got that. I'm not going to ask you if you've ever been in love. You can decide that for yourself. But if you've ever had something which you thought might be love, it's your complete meditation, isn't it? You may want to think of something else, but you can't. It just takes you over. So, if we want to reach this stage with Krishna, it's dead easy. We just have to fall in love with Krishna. That's our process. We talk about pure love of God, and that sounds really tough. But our process is fall in love with God. And that's why we have all the kind of things that inspire someone to fall in love. We have beautiful pictures of Krishna, and beautiful deities, and beautiful descriptions. We hear about what he does. And we get to hang out with him in our devotional service, to serve him in different ways and feel his presence with us. And Prabhupada goes through the different devotional process: hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet, worshipping, praying, executing the orders, fraternizing, and fully surrendering. This is love. Those are the things that build love and which express love. That's how we will get to remember Krishna. But as Prabhupada says, we need to be persistent. You know? We are not just fancying Krishna for a little while and then, I got someone else in my mind. You know? No, be persistent. Be true lovers. And it will build. I'm watching that clock very carefully. I've been told that you are absolutely ferocious with timing. Which is very good. I appreciate it. So I think at that point
Their university is closing 12 too, so you can relax.
Oh, okay, all right. We're fine. We're fine. But that's really the concluding point, and maybe we can open up for a little discussion at this point.
Patanjali's path. Ferocious might too. Just about this thing. It's got to come on. Patanjali's path is like the stairs. It feels like it's like this slow, begrudging stair walk of just like, oh my, it's impossible. The mind. But then bhakti is like, it's not even the elevator. It's like the Harry Potter style of travel of like you drop the flu powder in the fire pit and it just, and you're there. It's amazing. And I found when you were discussing time, kala, it's, for some reason it brings up the thought of like the immovable object meeting like the unstoppable force. It's like this unstoppable force that's pushing. I've never thought of time in that way. I always have conceived that like I'm within time instead of being driven by it. It's fascinating.
And because that is our concept of kala, that it is that which drives forth material energy, there is pre-cosmic time in the material energy.
And perhaps we're that immovable object. You see, like the consciousness itself, because we're the witness, we're not within the time, nor are we actually being driven by time, but we're witnessing the manifestation unfold about us. Yeah.
Just a word on Patanjali. I was very lucky to be engaged by Garuda, who's just preparing a bhakti version of the Yoga Sutra. Because the sutras are arranged in such a way that there's meditation, metaphysics, bhakti. You know, within every verse, every text. When you actually read it in a bhakti context, you see he's bringing out ultimate surrender and love of Krishna within Yoga Maya. It's fascinating. So, but more things.
Thank you for the class, Prabhuji. In text 41, at the end of it, basically Bhishma, he's talking about how the process of his remembrance. He says the last sentence, this happened during my presence. He's referring to Rajasuya sacrifice. And he says, and I remember the incident in order to keep my mind upon the Lord. And I thought it was really interesting how he doesn't specify, he doesn't say, I remember it's just a vision. Because I remember the past time. It helps me to remember the Lord. And I remember Bhakti Maharaj, he was talking about morning japa. He said sometimes it's important for devotees to pick a special verse, a special pastime that can help to drag the mind and anchor it when it's necessary. Could you speak on the importance of pastimes? And at the end of the class, you did speak about falling in love with Krishna. And I suppose there's some connection on Krishna's performing those pastimes to help us to do so.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So that, it's nice you picked that out. That Bhishma's focusing on a particular thing that really impressed him. Of course, part of the reason that he'll remember that pastime is he didn't play his part. I mean, there was Draupadi going to him, begging him to sort something out, and he just couldn't. So there's a bit of guilt in this one for him. But when you know you've done wrong and Krishna still loves you, Krishna still come to him at this stage. But that would inspire love, wouldn't it? That no matter someone, you let down his devotee so badly in that situation, but still Krishna's willing to come to you. If someone's willing to forgive you for your worst sins, you know they love you. I think that we all become attracted to the pastimes, both the ones we read and the ones we personally experience, where we get an inkling that we're loved. Because we're so selfish at this stage of our progress that we want to be loved more than we're ready to love. So those pastimes that help us to understand that Krishna loves us, I think, will be the ones that will inspire us at this stage.
Hi Krishna, thank you so much for a really, really wonderful class. I was just now meditating on this concept of falling in love, right? We hear in our scriptures that Krishna has given us free will and he never forces us. We have to make a choice to love him. And through these 9 processes of devotional service, that's how we fall in love with Krishna. And I was thinking about how in this material world, we think of falling in love like you don't force yourself to fall in love. Like it's something that like happens naturally, right? And I was meditating how in Krishna consciousness, by putting ourselves in Krishna's presence through these 9 processes of devotional service and in the association of devotees, we're creating the environment where we can fall in love with Krishna. But I want to hear your thoughts on this. I think that force isn't the right word, but it, like Radhana Swami says that if you don't feel enthusiastic, you should act enthusiastic. And I think we could sometimes make the mistake of, I don't feel it, right? And I don't want to force myself. But I think part of the practice of Krishna consciousness is maybe force isn't the right word, but you know what I mean? Like Prabhupada gives the example of jaundice, that the sugar candy is bitter, but that's for the person who has jaundice, but that's the cure. And as you take the sugar candy, then it starts to become sweet. So in Krishna consciousness, even if the taste isn't there, by, I guess I'll use the word forcing ourselves or having that strong desire for that absorption and choosing to do those things which absorb ourselves more, then that sugar candy will turn from bitter to sweet and the taste will come. I was wondering if you could speak a little on that.
Okay, quite a few things there. I think we have to appreciate our level of ability to love. It's not great, material world, because material world is a place of selfishness. Right now, selfishness is the opposite of that. So we're not good at it. But things that prompt and inspire love are even like with Rukmini, hearing about Krishna. If you don't know about Krishna, how are you going to fall in love with him? And Prabhupada often says that, you're claiming you love God, but what do you know about him? And so we have to at least be attracted in different stages, even just to the concept that there might be Supreme. It's got to start somewhere. And we've got to think, okay, let me explore that a bit, what is this thing, you know? Because whatever I've heard about God has not attracted me, you know? Sounded pretty awful. So now we have to hear why there could be a supreme being who, in one sense, he says, Madhyaji, worship me. He's saying he'd like our worship, but it's not for him. It's to bring something out of us, you know? And for us to make a little effort to be less selfish, less self-centered and focused, and to actually open our hearts a little bit. And it's a slow, tough process. If we're not feeling something in Krishna consciousness, it's generally, we just become a little closed in our heart. And we need to do something to open out of that. And actually, my suggestion is have fun in the association of devotees. I think that if you can be with the happy devotees and share in the pleasure that devotees get in Krishna consciousness, your heart opens up. So that's why it's not possible to get to a stage of loving Krishna without being in the association of happy devotees who are also trying. And at times, each of us will be the one who's feeling a little down, a little dull. And we need others to inspire us. And at times, they'll be a little down, and we have to be the ones to share a little bit of our acceleration. And I think, if anything, that's my experience. What keeps devotees in the path of Krishna consciousness is that they like being with devotees.
Thank you so much. It also talks about, our scriptures talk about how that we receive bhakti from the heart of one who has bhakti. And then not only at the beginning, but in every stage of progression in our devotional service, we advance by the bhakti in the heart of someone who has bhakti. So it's all through association.
And in those cases, we're not just talking about mega devotees. We're talking about each other as well. One more, then I'm afraid I have to go for a session.
I just wanted to share some thoughts which came after this question. Just a few words came into the devotional service, like it's science of devotional service, which Prabhupada many times describes as like science of love. So it's actually a scientific process of how to fall in love with Krishna. And then some example comes to me when listening to Srila Prabhupada's disciples, remembering him, and those times, they said we didn't knew Krishna, we only knew Prabhupada, and we fell in love with Prabhupada, and we wanted to please and serve him, and that's how they developed their love. Wanted to share that if you want to also tell us more.
Particularly, I think, in the early years, when those who we were associating with didn't know Krishna and hadn't experienced Krishna so much in their lives, the focus naturally was on Srila Prabhupada. I came to Krishna consciousness a little later, but when I had, and I came into a situation where there were many devotees who had been practicing for a few years. And at that time, I reckoned that if you've been in the movement 4 years, you were really up there. I was really impressed with them, so those were the and those are the devotees. In many ways, I kind of fell in love with the devotees. And then, of course, we were reading Prabhupada's books, we were kind of doing everything for him all day. So through that, we were kind of opening our hearts to Prabhupada and getting Krishna. So I think that there's a greater richness now. Definitely want you to fall in love with Prabhupada. And through Prabhupada and how he experienced Krishna, we learn about Krishna. But all the other devotees now are also supportive. And that is why our movement should be growing exponentially. There's so much love in the hearts of the devotees. Share it around, please. Okay,